Friends, my name is Steve Guttenberg. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show. My guest today is none other than Herb Reichert from Stereophile. We're old pals.
Wasn't that long later, and he started building amps and reading books. And then one day, Garber calls me on the phone and he says, "I've got this shop." And he says, "You won't believe it. The address is 30 Watt Street." And we're going, that's a sign from above. God loves us. We're gonna make it big now, man. This is gonna be huge. And for a year, nobody got rich, and it wasn't that huge. And we starved. I mean, it was like we met Kimura there, and we met Uchida.
These are all, turns out to be like the Triode Mafia.
Right, and it was drawn to this 30 Watt Street location.
And the store was called Phi.
Phi, F-I, lowercase. And it's iconic, and it was really cool. It's kind of sad. I mean, it's like maybe 18 months later, no more than that, I got another call, and Garber was crying again. And he said, they broke the main window. They broke in and took everything. And I believe it was I actually believe I saw some of that gear in another used audio shop that probably someone got hired to break in and bring it all to a warehouse. Because they took everything. They knew what they were stealing. Nobody breaks in and steals like, old quads and in boxes.
That was it. So it was like a year?
That was the end of Phi.
Yeah. But it wasn't the end of Don Garber making amplifiers under the Phi name.
He wasn't really making amplifiers yet. He was a proprietor. When the store closed, he dove deep.
Okay.
He gave up construction when the store opened, and now he doesn't have a store or construction, but he's learned. He's a quick learner. He's a smart dude, man. And he can hear, and he understands and loves music, most importantly.
So the store closes because it's a robbery. He can't rebuild from there. So he just continues. This is the question, Herb. So Don continues by starting his company called Phi, where he was making amplifiers and preamplifiers and phono preamps. And then he basically did that for the rest of his life, right?
I think it's important to understand, and I'm not sure how many of his fans, which are, humongous amount, understood Garber was a painter as well. J.C. Morrison went to really good art schools and studied in the Whitney program. So we're all three artists. Garber I lived in a firehouse. He lived his wife was a Japanese architect. And they lived in a beautiful, beautiful, amazing, like, carriage house.
Yeah, I was in it. Yeah.
In, I guess it's Brooklyn Heights.
Cobble Hill.
Cobble Hill.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. And so all of a sudden, we're now hanging out, not at the firehouse, which nobody really wanted to go to, but instead of hanging out at Phi, we're hanging out at Garber's place. And Garber, every time you come over, he's showing you new paintings and new amplifiers. And he had a better knack than any of us for making chassis out of things. He's really good he's a maker.
Yeah.
And to me, makers are the people, the salt of the earth, as they say. And Garber never stopped being an artist, a painter, and an amp builder.
But, so I'm confused with the chronology. So the Sound Practices actually preceded Phi? The magazine Sound Practices?
I believe so, and I believe that when Phi opened, part of how it got going, and this is how we knew each other, was through, not Garber, but Gordon Rankin, for example, and even even Tim B. Paravicini was involved in Phi, and I believe that, and Vincent Gallo, and all these people were drawn in, or at least originally corralled by Joe Roberts when he founded Sound Practices. And I believe Garber, I'm guessing, I didn't ask him, but I assume Garber felt empowered by having that reach, that larger community. You just open a store called Phi on 30 Watt Street showing like rusty old amps and stuff. Nobody gives a crap. It's like, it already, the first ad, I believe, I wish I could remember it, was Triodes something, and lollipops. There was always a sense of kind of almost like surrealist or Dada art to the whole thing. We saw ourselves as really going against the mainstream. We saw this as like Dada in general. I mean, 1-watt amplifiers and horns, tubes, old triodes. I mean, the ridiculousness of this in 1992. Think about it.
So I was asking you, so I met JC, through you actually.
Right.
But I remember going to JC's apartment when he was living in the East Village, and he had these horn speakers or tapered pipe speakers, and he was playing this opera singer, Diamanda, really loud. And he said proudly, the amplifier is a 1/2 watt amp. Just to prove that it could be done kind of thing. It was so cool. And it was great sounding. It was just a solo voice. It wasn't an orchestra or anything. It was just her, and it sounded amazing. And he was pointing to the amplifier. Look at that. It's a 1/2 watt. And I was like, yeah, okay. I'm a believer.
You needed, it was kind of like a religion. You needed to convert people. You still do. I mean, there's the classic Herb story during that period. When there was Phi and when there was sound practices and when I first brought out the Flesh and Blood, I get this call late at night. And there's this voice on the other end of the phone screaming. It's like 11 o'clock at night, screaming, "There are no transducers!" Click. I'm like, what? Who is that? And then the person the phone rings again, and it's right next to where my chair is. And I pick it up and I'm going, "Who is this?" And he's going, "There's no transducers." And I'm like, "Who the hell are you?" And he says, "It's Dick." And what he meant was, it's Dick Sequeira, who was also kind of on, and he and Harvey Rosenberg, and even by extension, Sid Smith, and, there were people, the thread of this reached out. And that was the beauty of it. All of a sudden, Phi, sound practices, building amplifiers, and, people like Gordon Rankin and Tim DePervicini certainly didn't hurt, but all of a sudden, not only did we have some credibility, but we had access to what I call really smart wizards. And having access to wizards is not the same as being alone in your basement going, "I'm doing it right and you're all wrong." It's really different when people are sort of converting, and the people who are converting know what the hell they're doing. Way more than I did, certainly. And so that was the beauty of it. I mean, I probably wouldn't be standing here today if it weren't for a handful of people like nodding approval to like what crazy kids were doing.
So what was it like? Did you guys, with you and JC and Kimura and Don, were you like going out to restaurants and arguing about designs and circuitry and stuff?
There's a lot of drawing on napkins still. I mean, great amps are designed on napkins, not in software programs in my world.
Oh, that's great.
There's no question. But we were really poor. I mean, to stay home and solder, even today, to stay home and solder, even repairing amps, you can't hardly make a living. JC has gone on to become a world-renowned amplifier designer, designing for Silbertone. Gordon Rankin has gone on to become one of the wizards of our industry, and I don't think anybody would argue that one. And Garber, God bless him, has passed. Kimura is still, I think, one of the great living amp designers, and we will hear more from him. Tim DePervicini is Tim DePervicini.
Right.
Needs no introduction at this point. But strangely, and it's funny, I think it happened, don't laugh, I can't blame anything. I mean, I fell into Audio Note. They all went and did what they did. I believe JC went to work for Dick Sequeira, and then he went to work for New Sensor, and now he works for Silbertone. I ended up hooking up with Peter Kortrup and going to Audio Note and spent a bunch of years doing that with Mike Trey. And you know, our paths are different. I painted more, and I taught for a while. You know, you do what you know, I do what I have to do to survive, which is what I'm doing now. You know, scribbling, prattling, and painting.
That's great.
Joe Roberts, he really is a huge influence, and he forced me to write my first article, and it had a big impact. And he said, you know, and he paid me for it. And he's the one who said, Herb, never write for free. And he really still is. I go to the European Triad Festival. I still hang with these people. And by extension, he's a worldwide influencer in this realm. Mm. And I mean that in a big way. He's also the main curator for an unlimited cost, someday to be opened, vintage audio museum in Korea. And so he's involved every day still with triodes and you know, that kind of gear.
Anything about Harvey, though?
Oh, Harvey. Every time you mention Harvey, I always think John Atkinson wrote the most beautiful article. I believe he wrote the obituary for Harvey Rosenberg. And I met Harvey through Dick Sequeira and Joe Roberts. And Dick Sequeira was a big impact. But I've never seen, he's so damn grumpy, it was unbelievable. He made Garber seem like Jesus Christ or something. And Garber was grumpy. But Harvey would show up. I mean, I think Harvey liked the Firehouse. I think we went around and did like dog and pony shows, me and Harvey, just to get people to believe in, you know, the idea that a 5-watt amplifier with no feedback could actually be a viable concept. And Harvey had a way, man. You know, don't go on after Harvey.
He was a preacher.
He was a preacher. And he was smart, too. I mean, he turned me on to Futterman. And Futterman, to my mind, is one of the great amp designers ever. You know, he introduced me to Sid Smith. I mean, he was a huge influencer during his time. And he even had an impact on people like John Atkinson.
That's like a meeting of minds. I can't even imagine Harvey and John together.
I know. I never got to witness that. And I'm still sorry John never showed up at Phi or something like that. But, you know, if he knew Harvey, he understood more than most people would just from knowing Harvey. I was a lucky guy, and I still maintain being, I don't make any claims in terms of wisdom or intelligence, but being in the right place at the right time, wearing the right color hat is a smart thing. And I definitely got lucky when it came to listener and sound practices, no question. And stereophile.
I'd say. The New York Times of audio magazines.
So they say.
I think we're good.
Thank you.
All right. My guest today is none other than Herb Reichert himself. I am Steve Guttenberg. This is the Audiophiliac Daily Show, coming to you from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, with sirens. And I start to feel at home, just like on my block.
In 2020, dystopia.
Dystopia. Well, it's almost winter.
Thank you, Steve.
And it's getting cold. Anyway, this was fantastic. So hopefully I pressed the right button and we recorded this thing. And we'll see you guys again real soon. Bye-bye.